Snow was falling again. Thick, heavy flakes drifted through the air like slow-motion confetti, blurring the sidewalk in front of me as I stepped out of the grocery store, juggling two overfilled paper bags and a purse that wouldn't stay on my shoulder. My breath came in sharp puffs, more from the weight of everything than the cold. I'd only taken a few steps toward my car when I saw it, a plain white envelope wedged awkwardly in the front gate of our house. At first, I thought it was just another flyer, until I saw the emblem, the seal of the Massachusetts Family Court. I stood frozen on the walkway, the snow soaking into my boots, staring at that envelope as if it were ticking. My fingers were numb when I finally picked it up, but it wasn't the cold that made me tremble. It was the single line in bold type at the top, summons for divorce proceedings. I clutched it against my chest, paper crinkling under pressure, and for a moment I couldn't breathe. Eric had finally done it. He had filed for divorce. I don't remember how I got inside the house. The next thing I recall clearly is the way my keys slipped out of my hand when I tried to open the door. They hit the wooden steps with a metallic clatter that seemed far too loud for the quiet neighborhood. Once I made it inside, the warmth didn't help. My skin was cold, but it was my insides that were frozen. 15 years of marriage, just swept away with a piece of paper. I dropped the grocery bags on the kitchen counter, not even bothering to unpack them. My eyes moved across the room. So familiar, so intimate, and yet suddenly, it all felt staged. The dining table still had 2 chairs pushed out, like we'd just eaten breakfast together. Except we hadn't. Not in weeks. Eric had moved out 2 months ago. He said he needed space, time to think. And I, like a fool, believed him. I told myself it was temporary, that we were just going through a rough patch, that once the holidays passed, he'd come back, that he still loved me. But the envelope in my hand didn't love me. It didn't offer time or tenderness. It offered a court date. I wandered through the house like a ghost, my fingers grazing the edges of furniture as if trying to anchor myself to something real. When I reached the living room, my eyes locked onto the photo that hung above the fireplace, our wedding picture. It had been there for years, a framed memory of the day I'd said yes to a man who looked at me like I was the only person in the world. I was glowing in that photo. Eric, in his black tuxedo, was smiling in a way that felt sincere. I hadn't looked at that photo in a long time, not really looked. But now, standing there with a summons in my hand and snow melting in my hair, I couldn't look away. The rage came first, then grief, then nothing. Just the numbness of someone who had spent too many nights waiting for a phone call that never came. I stepped up to the fireplace, reached up and took the photo down. It was heavier than I remembered. The frame was thick mahogany, the kind Eric had insisted on back then because things worth keeping should be framed well. I stared at it, unsure what to do. Should I throw it away? Burn it? Keep it as some cruel reminder? Eventually, I turned it over. I don't even know why. Habit, maybe. The backing was sealed tight, but I pried it open carefully, as if even the glass might hold secrets. That's when it fell out. A small key, no larger than the one to our old mailbox, slid down from behind the photo and clinked softly onto the hardwood floor. I stared at it for a long time, and then picked it up with trembling fingers. I had never seen this key before. Not in 15 years of marriage. Not once. It had been hidden behind our wedding photo by Eric. But why? And then I remembered the safe. Eric's private safe in the study. He'd installed it years ago, claiming he needed a secure place for important documents. I never asked what was in it. I respected his privacy. He never offered to show me. Never once. But now I needed answers. Still holding the key, I made my way down the hallway, past the photos, the coat rack, the hallway light we never fixed. My heart was pounding. The air in the study felt colder somehow, untouched by the heating vent. The safe was where I remembered, tucked discreetly behind his desk, nearly blending into the wall. I knelt down, fingers shaking, and slid the key into the lock. It fit. With a soft click, the safe opened. And what I found inside changed everything. Inside the safe, everything looked too neat, too intentional. A manila folder sat directly in the center, perfectly squared. Next to it was a small stack of envelopes, a USB drive, and photographs. My fingers hovered above them for a moment. I didn't want to touch them, didn't want to know, but I had already opened the door, hadn't I? I reached for the folder first. On top, clipped with a silver binder, was a printed lease agreement. I didn't need to read far. My husband, Eric Blake, had signed a 12-month lease on a luxury penthouse in Beacon Hill, one of the most expensive neighborhoods in Boston. The lease started nearly a year ago. I stared at the date. Then again, he had another place for a year. While I'd been home, hoping he'd come back, while I'd been mourning the silence of an empty bed, he had been living a second life. I flipped through the rest of the documents, more leases, notarized copies of financial transactions, bank statements from an account I didn't recognize. Every month, like clockwork, tens of thousands of dollars deposited from a company I'd never heard of, Blue Ridge Capital Holdings. It wasn't his salary from the architecture firm. That income came to our joint account. This was separate, hidden, secret, and the numbers, God, they weren't small. Eric had been moving money like a man laundering it, not saving it. There were wire transfers to offshore entities, multiple cash withdrawals, rental payments, and none of it made any sense. I reached for the photographs next. That's when my hands started shaking. The first one was of Eric, but not alone. His arm was around a woman. Young, stunning, hair tied back in a soft bun. They were laughing. She was leaning into him the way I used to. His hand rested gently on her belly. No, the second photo was of them holding a newborn. A hospital band was still on her wrist. The third, him feeding the baby with a bottle, shirt unbuttoned like a proud father in a Pampers ad. And the fourth, a birth certificate. The baby's name, date of birth. Father, Eric Blake. I dropped the photo. I think I said his name out loud, like some desperate plea, as if speaking it would undo what I'd just seen. The room spun around me. My knees gave out, and I sat on the floor, surrounded by paper and proof, stunned into silence. He had a child. While I was bleeding on a hospital bed from a miscarriage that shattered me, he was preparing for a new life. With her. With them. I don't know how long I sat there. Maybe 5 minutes. Maybe an hour. The snow outside continued to fall, indifferent and clean, covering rooftops and streets in white. But inside, in that little study, everything was wreckage. Eventually, the tears came. Not sobbing. Not even weeping. Just silent rivers down my cheeks. I looked at the safe, at the photos, the money, the lies. There was no coming back from this. But there was power in knowing, power in silence. He didn't know I'd found it, not yet. And that meant I had time. I gathered everything slowly, folded the documents back into the folder, put the photos on top, careful not to bend them. The USB I pocketed. Whatever was on it might matter later. Then I closed the safe, locked it, and kept the key. I stepped back into the hallway, the weight of what I discovered pressing down on my chest. My legs were unsteady, but my mind had started to clear. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to call him. I wasn't going to cry on the kitchen floor with a bottle of wine. No, I needed to think, to plan. I needed help. The one person I could trust with this, the only person who wouldn't treat me like a helpless wife unraveling, was Rachel Levin. We hadn't spoken in nearly a year. Life got in the way, but she'd been my best friend since college, and more importantly, she was a damn good lawyer. I sat down at the kitchen counter, still in my coat, hands stiff from cold and betrayal, and scrolled through my contacts until her name appeared. My thumb hesitated, then pressed. She picked up on the second ring. Hannah. Her voice was warm, surprised. Oh my God, it's been forever. Rachel. My voice cracked, barely a whisper. I need your help. She paused. I could hear her shift in her seat. What's going on? My husband filed for divorce and I found something. Something big. How big? He has a second apartment, a second bank account, and a second family. There was silence. Then Rachel's voice dropped an octave, all emotion replaced with focus. I'm coming over. Don't do anything. Don't call him. Don't move anything. We're going to handle this the right way. Thank you. Text me your address again. I'll be there in 30. I hung up, phone shaking in my hand. Outside, the snow kept falling. But inside me, something else was forming. Not a blizzard. Not a storm. Resolve. The house felt different after Rachel left. She had stayed for over 2 hours, combing through every document I had pulled from the safe. Her lawyer's brain lit up with each inconsistency, each hidden transaction, each lie etched into legal paper. She didn't say much when she saw the photo of the baby, but the look in her eyes said it all. She knew what this meant. She knew what Eric had become. Before she left, she put a hand on mine and said, "Don't let him know you know. Not yet. Let him play his hand first. Then we strike." That night, I barely slept. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the dark silhouette of our old dresser, the same one we'd picked out during our first year of marriage. I waited for dawn like it was a verdict, and when the sun came up, I was still awake. Around 9, my phone rang. Eric. I stared at the screen for a long time before answering. "Hi," I said, steadying my voice. "Hey," he replied, too casually. "Did you get the papers?" I did. I figured. I'm sorry you had to find out that way. I meant to talk to you first, but you didn't. A pause. No, I didn't. Another silence. Then he cleared his throat. Can I stop by? I think we should talk. Face to face. Every instinct in me screamed no, but I needed to hear what he would say, what version of the truth he'd offer. I needed to see if he could lie to my face, knowing I already knew everything. Sure, I said. Tonight, around 7. I'll bring dinner, he offered. Your favorite, pad thai. I almost laughed. He still remembered my favorite takeout order, while forgetting the vows we made 15 years ago. Fine, I said, and hung up before he could say anything else. The rest of the day was a blur. I cleaned the house out of reflex, not because I cared how it looked. I did laundry I didn't need to, rearranged throw pillows, threw out a wilted bouquet that had been sitting too long in the hallway vase. Everything I did felt like a performance, a way to distract myself from the storm that was coming through my front door in a few hours. At exactly 7, the doorbell rang. Eric stood there, holding a brown paper bag and wearing that same easy smile he used on real estate clients and PDA moms. His coat was perfectly tailored, his hair freshly cut. He looked good, better than he had in months. Like divorce suited him. Hi, he said, as if this was just another evening. You look nice. I didn't, but I let him in anyway. We sat in the kitchen, across from each other. He unpacked the takeout containers, arranging them like we were on some weird date. I didn't touch my food. Neither did he. He broke the silence. So, I'm guessing you're upset. I tilted my head, slightly. You think. He sighed, leaned back in his chair. This isn't easy for me either, Hannah. Sure it is. You had a year to plan it. His eyes flicked to mine, startled. Just for a second. Then he masked it. I didn't plan this. Things just changed between us. I said nothing. He pressed on. You must have noticed. We were growing apart. You barely smiled anymore. We didn't talk like we used to. It's nobody's fault, it's just time. A textbook deflection. Impersonal. Polished. I forced a small nod, playing along. He relaxed slightly. Look, I don't want this to be messy. I was hoping we could settle things quietly, fairly. I raised an eyebrow. Define fairly. The house, we bought it together. You can keep it if you want. I'll sign it over to you. I stared at him, and, in exchange, I'd like you to waive any claims to my investments and personal savings. There it was. I leaned forward slightly. What savings? What investments? His mouth tightened. Just small things. A project I've been working on outside of the firm. Nothing major. I laughed under my breath. You always were bad at lying. His face changed. He didn't speak for a few seconds, then said, I'm trying to be reasonable, Hannah. Reasonable would have been telling me about Beacon Hill. He froze. I saw the blood drain from his face. The name hit him like a slap. How? I said I'd think about it. I interrupted, not letting him recover. About the house. About the terms. He stood up abruptly. I should go. Probably. He grabbed his coat, hesitating at the doorway like he wanted me to say something. Apologize. Cry. Beg. I said nothing. As the door shut behind him, I exhaled for the first time in hours. He didn't know how much I knew, but now he knew I knew something, and that made me dangerous. The house was still when he left. Too still, like it was holding its breath with me. I stood in the hallway for a long time, listening to the click of the deadbolt, the echo of his footsteps fading down the front walk. Only after I heard the car engine start did I let myself move. I walked back to the kitchen, barely noticing the untouched food, the condensation still clinging to the plastic lids. His favorite noodles sat across from mine like some kind of parody of our marriage, steaming, flavorless, fake. I threw it all in the trash. Then I went upstairs, pulled the folder out from where I had hidden it behind a stack of old scarves in the back of my closet, and sat on the bedroom floor. I reviewed everything again, even though I already knew every page by heart. The lease, the bank statements, the birth certificate, the photos. I laid them out around me like puzzle pieces, except the image they formed wasn't a picture, it was a weapon. I kept thinking about what he said. I was hoping we could settle this quietly. Of course he did, because a real divorce, a loud, public one, would raise questions. Questions about money, about other women, about secrets buried beneath luxury apartments and offshore transfers. That night, I didn't sleep. Again, I lay in bed with my phone on the pillow beside me, eyes wide in the dark. I was waiting. For what? I didn't know, maybe for the fear to catch up. Around 2:13 a.m., my phone buzzed. It wasn't Eric. It was a text from an unknown number. Photo attachment. I sat up, pulse jumping. Opened it. It was a picture of me. Me, walking down my street earlier that day. Grocery bag in hand, scarf wrapped tight, head tilted in the cold. Taken from across the street, at an angle. Slightly blurry, but clear enough to know I hadn't noticed whoever was behind the lens. Underneath the photo, just one sentence. Be careful. He's more dangerous than you think. My whole body went cold. I stared at the screen, rereading the words over and over. Dangerous? What did that mean? Dangerous how? My hands started shaking. I got up, checked every door, every window. I turned on lights. I peeked through the blinds. There was no one. Nothing. Just snow. I locked every lock twice. Then I sat back down and typed a reply. Who are you? What do you know? Nothing. No read receipt. No dots typing. I waited. My heart was pounding in my ears. Then, finally, another message. Dig deeper. He's not who you think he is. I wanted to scream. Instead, I did the only thing I could think to do. I called Rachel. She answered on the second ring, voice groggy. Hannah, are you okay? I just got a message. Someone sent me a photo of me walking home. They said Eric is dangerous. She didn't even hesitate. Do not stay in that house alone. I've already locked everything. That's not enough. I'm coming over. No, just let me talk to you for now. Please. Rachel took a breath, switching into her calm, lawyer voice. Tell me exactly what the message said. I read it to her. Both of them. Then I sent her the photo. There was a long pause. I don't think this is some random threat, she said. It's too specific. Someone is watching you. Someone who knows something. Someone who knows Eric. Exactly. Her voice dropped lower. We need more than just legal advice now. We need someone who can investigate this quietly without tipping him off. You mean a private investigator? I know a guy. Used to work for the FBI. I've used him for corporate cases. He's good. Discreet. Tough. Then call him. First thing in the morning. I hung up, but sleep didn't come. I sat on the couch with the hallway light on, blanket around my shoulders, phone in my lap. Every creak of the house made me flinch. I kept hearing that message in my head. He's more dangerous than you think. Eric had always been many things, distant, secretive, cold, but dangerous? I didn't want to believe it. But now, I couldn't afford not to. The next morning, Rachel showed up at my house with coffee and a manila folder. His name is Matthew Crane, she said, handing me a business card. He's agreed to meet with you this afternoon. What did you tell him? Just the surface. That your husband might be hiding assets. That you found suspicious documents. That you need eyes on him. Fast. I nodded, still holding the card. You trust him? With my life, Rachel said. And today that might matter. The cafe was tucked between a bookstore and a flower shop on a quiet street in downtown Boston. It was the kind of place that smelled like cinnamon and warm milk, with chalkboard menus and mismatched chairs. Rachel had picked it for exactly that reason. Too quiet for drama, too open for danger. We arrived early. Rachel took a table by the window, pretending to work on her laptop. I chose a booth in the far corner, my back to the wall so I could see the entrance. My hands trembled as I stirred a cup of tea I didn't want. I kept checking the time. At exactly 6 o'clock, the door opened. She walked in like she had every right to be there. Tall, elegant, dark hair pulled into a low twist. She scanned the room, quickly, spotted me, and walked straight over. My heart pounded so loudly I was sure she could hear it. Hi, she said softly, sliding into the seat across from me. I'm Lauren. Of course she was. Up close. She looked younger than I'd expected. Early 30s, maybe. Pretty, but in a quiet way. No makeup, no jewelry, just sharp eyes and nervous energy. I'm Hannah, I said, even though she already knew. We sat there in silence for a moment. Two women tethered by the same man, trying to figure out which one had been lied to more. I appreciate you agreeing to meet, she said. I wasn't sure if you would. I wasn't sure either. She looked down at her hands, fidgeting with the edge of a napkin. I didn't know about you, not at first. He told me he was divorced, that the marriage had ended years ago. I said nothing. I found out the truth by accident, she continued. Saw a photo of you and him on his phone. He tried to explain. Said you were just roommates now, that there was no love left, that the divorce paperwork was already filed. I let out a breath that sounded too much like a laugh. He's good at making fiction feel like fact. She nodded. I believed him. I wanted to believe him. I was pregnant. I thought, if he's telling me he wants a future, then maybe the past doesn't matter. You had a son. Yes. His name is Mason. He's almost one now. I swallowed hard. Congratulations. The words felt like poison on my tongue. She hesitated, then leaned in slightly. But that's not why I asked to meet. Then why? Her voice dropped. Because you need to know who he really is. What he's involved in. I frowned. You mean the money? She looked up, startled. You know. I nodded. About the second apartment, the secret account, the transfers from Blue Ridge. She exhaled slowly. Then you know more than I thought. Not enough, I said. Not to explain why someone's taking photos of me from across the street and warning me that he's dangerous. Lauren froze. They messaged you too, she asked. My stomach turned. Wait, they messaged you. She reached into her purse, pulled out a sealed envelope, and slid it across the table. I used to work at Blue Ridge, she said. Marketing. I didn't know what it really was at first. But over time, things didn't add up. Meetings without records. documents that disappeared, money that moved like shadows. I opened the envelope. Inside were printed emails, names, transaction logs, account numbers, enough to bury a dozen people. My name was on some of those transfers, Lauren whispered. I didn't sign them. I didn't even know they existed until a friend tipped me off. And Eric. He's not just involved, she said. He's embedded. He's the one who makes the money look clean. He moves it through real estate, buys, sells, flips. That's why he opened the company. That's why he kept you. Kept me. As cover, Hannah. You're respectable, steady, a homeowner, a long-term marriage, looks clean. It keeps auditors away. The words sliced through me like ice. I was part of his strategy, not his life. I'm sorry, Lauren added quietly. I didn't come here to hurt you. I came because you're in danger, and you deserve to know the whole truth. I stared at the documents again. Dates, signatures, some so large they didn't even look real. It was all here. Proof that Eric wasn't just cheating, he was laundering, hiding, lying on every level. Why now? I asked. Because I'm leaving, she said. Mason and I were disappearing. New city, new names. I've seen what they do to people who talk. I wanted to leave something behind in case they come for you too. My throat tightened. You think they would? I think they'll come for anyone who knows too much. We both sat still, the low hum of the cafe around us suddenly too loud. Lauren stood first. Be careful, Hannah. If he thinks you're a threat, he won't protect you. He'll protect himself. Then she walked out, leaving me alone with a folder full of truth and a life I no longer recognized. The next morning, the city looked different. Not because the snow had stopped, or because the streets were quieter, but because everything I saw now carried a weight I couldn't unsee. Every passerby felt like a potential threat. Every honk, every shadow across the sidewalk made me flinch. I wasn't just betrayed anymore. I was exposed. At 9, Rachel picked me up and drove us to a federal building in South Boston. No labels, no sign out front, just a gray door with a buzzer. A man in a suit opened it. Sharp features, measured eyes. He introduced himself as Agent David Monroe from the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. We were led to a quiet room with bare walls and a single long table. No mirrors, no dramatics, just facts. I handed him both envelopes, what I had taken from Eric's safe and what Lauren had given me the night before. Agent Monroe reviewed every page in silence, marking details with a pencil. Occasionally he asked short questions. Dates, names, context. Rachel answered most of them. I just watched. When he finished, he looked up. You realize what this is, right? I nodded. He's not just laundering money. He's laundering identities. He tapped the edge of the folder. Your husband isn't just complicit. He's essential. He built the mechanism. Blue Ridge is a shell for international funds, dirty ones. We've suspected it for years, but never had this level of internal proof. Until now. So what happens next? I asked. Agent Monroe folded his hands. We build a case, but we'll need your help. Testimony, possibly cooperation in controlled surveillance. And in return, we offer protection, he said. Immediate relocation if necessary. Witness protection if the risk level rises. I swallowed hard. So I'd have to disappear. Possibly, but not overnight. We'll start with federal monitoring. Your phone, your house, your movements. If Eric or his associates become aware you're cooperating, we'll escalate. Rachel put a hand on mine. You don't have to decide now. But I already knew I couldn't live like this, half in, half out of fear. That night, back at her apartment, I stared at the ceiling for hours. My phone vibrated twice. Eric. I didn't answer. The third message finally said, we need to talk. Now, I know what you did. I stared at the words until the screen dimmed. He knew. Somehow he knew. And that meant the clock had started ticking. The next morning, I called Agent Monroe and said the words that burned my throat. I'm in. Whatever it takes. Everything moved quickly after that. Federal officers came to sweep Rachel's apartment. Surveillance was installed. My phone was replaced with a secure device. I was told to avoid contact with anyone connected to Eric, including old friends, mutual acquaintances, even his parents. I packed only what would fit in a single duffel. A few clothes. The only photo I kept was one of me and my mother when I was little. I left my wedding ring on the dresser. Eric called once more. I didn't pick up. The sound of his name on the caller ID was enough to make my stomach twist. 2 days later, under the cover of darkness, I was moved. New town, new identity, new life. I wasn't Hannah Blake anymore. Not on paper, not to the world. But inside, she was still there, and she remembered everything. Sometimes I sit by the window in my small apartment, furnished by the government, temporary, and I think about the woman I used to be, the wife who waited, the woman who trusted, the one who couldn't imagine Eric doing anything worse than forgetting an anniversary. And then I remember the bank accounts, the child, the lies, the danger. I remember the photograph someone took of me walking home. I remember the woman who risked everything to warn me. And I remember that it didn't break me. It changed me, but it didn't end me. One day, this investigation will be over. One day, Eric Blake will be in a courtroom, wearing a suit that doesn't belong to him, facing crimes even he can't explain away. And when that day comes, I won't be in the crowd. I won't be watching, but I'll know. And that will be enough, because I survived the man who thought he owned my silence. And now, I live with freedom in my name.